Welcome back to DMV Sports Zone.
Chased down by Beal in the corner for three, gets fouled and hits.
Welcome to DC.
Walker tied him out.
You know where you're at, the USA cap. You're taking it slightly, I'm taking it slightly. Now how you gon' act, or you gon' be right back. Well, we gon' be right here, we gon' be right here. We ain't going nowhere. Welcome to DC.
What's good, everyone? It's your boy Nazi with another video for the channel. Welcome back to the DMV Sports Zone. And before diving into the subject at hand, I do want to say it hit me right before I hit record on this video that I think this video and the next one will be my last two ones recorded in Chicago. It's been quite the journey. I wanted to take a second to shout out all the Chicago peeps that have been supporting this channel from the very, very beginning. You guys know who you are. And I'll still be attending more school. I'll be at law school and it'll be in a whole different place in New York. But last time in Chicago and before graduation, last time recording videos for this channel. So I wanted to take a second to shout people out. Also, by the time you guys will see this video, probably be my birthday. So a lot of things are coming together at the right time. And I think one of those things is the topic of this video, because this might come as a shocker to many of you who have been supporting this channel from the very beginning, because I'm a very realistic fan. I like to temper my expectations when it comes to this team. Some people call me pessimistic. I've seen comments calling me pessimistic for a couple of years now, really since the start of the channel. But I think the team hit it out of the park when it came to this draft class. I don't know what a lot of the critics of this draft class are saying, including our boy Tim from Tim Sports Talk, great content creator in our community, but I just disagree on this. I think this team deserves a B, if not B minus, off the draft class right now, largely because I think this team addressed every single one of the problem areas on this team that I've been talking about through the offseason, that I talked about in the 2021 regular season. We're talking about receiver, safety, cornerback depth, defensive line depth, especially after losses of Matt Ioannidis and Tim Settle. I mean, you name it, offensive line depth after the loss of Brandon Sheriff as well. This team drafted players to address every single one of these positions except one, albeit I would say the second biggest need on this team going into the draft, and that was linebacker. But I still think there's more time for that. I think we could potentially go out there and sign Alexander Johnson, who last played for the Denver Broncos, pretty good linebacker, played pretty well in Denver. Could potentially bring him in. But I think this team is not going to leave the linebacker position unresolved going into the season. I mean, Ron Rivera's already talked about how he wants to bring in a veteran to the group. So we'll talk more, maybe closer to training camp and the regular season if they don't address the linebacker position. But remember, they signed a starting left tackle last year around this time, if not later, actually, in Charles Leno. They also signed a starting kick returner and punt returner, DeAndre Carter, around this time. So I think there's still time left for that. But back to my main point. I think this draft class was very, very solid. It wasn't fantastic like I think the Jets draft class was or the Ravens draft class was, but it definitely was not as bad as a lot of fans felt, especially immediately after the draft. And I purposely wanted to wait a little bit before making this video because I wanted to leave some time for reflection of the draft class and listen to other people's perspectives, but really just hone in on my own. And here we go, bro. Here we go. First round, pick 16, Jahan Dotson, receiver, Penn State, senior, age 22. Well, by the time you guys see this video, my age. Sure, he's only 5'11", 178. But you know who's also the same size, actually? I just figured this out while researching for this video. Emmanuel Sanders, believe it or not. Emmanuel Sanders was 5'11", 180, and he had a pretty good career. Maybe the tail end of his career has, not been great, but he was pivotal in that first 49ers Super Bowl run a couple years back. And who can forget his dynamic production for the Denver Broncos when Peyton Manning was a quarterback, albeit. But, I mean, he was a great player there. He even had a 1,400-yard season, 9-touchdown season as well. And they literally ran about the same 40-yard time as well. I think Dotson was a 4.43. Emmanuel Sanders was a 4.41. But besides the size, right, of Jahan Dotson that a lot of people are worried about, a lot of people think he's a slot receiver automatically because he's small in stature. He plays much bigger than his size. He's a smart, instinctual player. very good character. You can sense it from each one of the interviews that he does, but also just from the stories that we've heard from him, dating back to his Penn State days and even his high school days and stuff. And I'd be remiss if I did not mention it's Mother's Day by the time when I record this, and his mother has dealt with a bout of cancer, and he's been able to stay strong for himself, but also for his family during this difficult time, and still stick to his academics while also playing high caliber football at Penn State. So he's just a great all-around person, and in terms of talent-wise, large catch radius as well. We all saw by now, we've all seen the touchdown that he had, the one-handed touchdown that he had against Shaun Wade for Ohio State a couple years back now. But honestly, guys, I think he could be that Emmanuel Sanders 2.0 or even a Tyler Lockett for us. I know many of you have already heard those comparisons, and both of those receivers have been really good. Maybe he might not ever be the top 5, top 10 receiver in this league, but I think he's going to be a very good receiver, and I think a lot of people are selling him short because of his short stature and because he wasn't a guy that you mentioned or you heard was linked to the Commanders before the draft, right? Everybody heard about Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, heck, Jameson Williams was on my top 3 list, right? And I remember as soon as Jahan Dotson was drafted, not a lot of people were happy in FedEx Field when we did that live stream, right, where we were interviewing players and we watched the draft live and stuff at FedEx Field during their draft party. Not many people were happy instantly, but after doing more research, even in that immediate reaction video, you saw that I was pretty high on him. But especially now, I think he's going to be a stud for our team. He's going to form a very formidable duo with Terry McLaurin, and we should be excited, man. Like, we really should. How often is it that I come here and tell you guys to be excited? Like, I think that says something about this draft class, and especially our first-round pick. I think, honestly, he was probably not one of the top 3 receivers in this draft class in terms of Jameson Williams and Drake London, Garrett Wilson. 2 of those guys were drafted ahead of the Commanders, but Jameson Williams was there, but he also had injury concerns. So I honestly think he was neck and neck with Chris Olave. A lot of draft scouts think the same as well, and I think it was a solid pick, especially because we got to trade back and get a 3rd and 4th round pick who we turned into some pretty good players as well, which I'll mention a little bit later. 2nd round, Phidarian Mathis. I think the defensive tackle out of Alabama, redshirt senior, who actually turned 24 2 days before the draft. He is a little up there in age for an NFL rookie, but I think this is the pick that a lot of people are confused about. I admittedly am still a little confused about. I think this is the worst pick of our draft class, although, guys, he's still 6'4", 310 pounds, top 40 overall high school recruit coming out of high school, being signed to Bama, earned various accolades during his collegiate career, all freshman, all SEC team, even though his sack numbers was not high for most of his career last year, as this supposed run stopper that a lot of us keep saying he had 9 sacks. And I know this was 2 critiques that I saw in the live chat during one of our live streams. One, he had a lot of those sacks, and even Pete Haley mentioned this. One, he had a lot of sacks when Alabama was up. The second point, he had a stacked defensive line group, stacked supporting cast on that defense that allowed him to get all those sacks. Well, if that's the case, why did Daron Payne only have 3 sacks coming out of Bama? Total. 3. In his entire collegiate career. While Mr. Phidarian Mathis, Phil Mathis, had 9 sacks, was a game record both in the run game and the pass game last year for Alabama, for the Crimson Tide, my Crimson Tide. But I'm even putting bias aside here, guys. Like, he's great, bro. Like, he's a very good prospect. I get it. The value was definitely not there. I agree with you guys on that, right? 2nd round pick for a defensive tackle. But I don't know if this is a hot take. Maybe it's lukewarm. I think Phidarian Mathis is going to be better than Daron Payne at the end of the day. I really do. Maybe not his rookie season, but in terms of the course of his career, if we allow him to play his career here in DC, I think he could be really good. I mean, Daron Payne racked up 14.5 sacks for the last 4 years as a run stopper primarily, right? And he was more of a run stopper than Phidarian Mathis coming out of college. And Phidarian Mathis is already pro ready, and I can see him racking up the sacks while also being a consistent force in the run game. And a lot of people don't appreciate this, but he could play nose tackle for us, especially if we move to the 5-2 system, 5 down linemen, 2 linebackers that it feels like this team is already moving towards, especially with us not really playing a 3rd linebacker much. I think he could be a very pivotal part of this defense, and it helps to also have a Jonathan Allen, Daron Payne, at least for the 2022 season, on his side as well. On each side of him, I should say. And again, with the value, I know Tim, who's watching, might say this. I did mention that Brisker and Leo Chenal were 2 and 1 respectively in my top 47 video that I posted last week, or a couple weeks ago now, and they were both on the board, right? So again, this points to the lack of value that we got in drafting Phil Mathis in the second round. But at the end of the day, he's definitely better than Matt Ioannidis and Tim Settle. All those guys out there who think that we could have re-signed Matt Ioannidis, Tim Settle, and gotten the same production that we're gonna get out of Mathis in the 2022 season, guys, I'm telling you, Phil Mathis was a beast last year, and he's going to continue being a beast for us. Let's get to my favorite pick in this draft class, outside of the obvious first rounder. My favorite pick, Brian Robinson Jr., running back, Alabama, redshirt senior, also a little up there in age for an NFL rookie, which is kind of crazy because I think 4 out of the 7 players that we drafted were actually redshirt seniors, right? 23, 24-year-old guys, which I think points to how the urgency for this team. I think Ron Rivera needs to start winning games, and he try to get as many pro-ready players as possible. And I think Brian Robinson is another one of those. 6'2", 225 pounds. I know you ran a 4.53 40-yard dash. Isn't the fastest of guys, but he didn't need to be the fastest of guys last year when he had 1,300 yards, 13 touchdowns, had all SEC honors, I believe, as well. And this was in his first opportunity to be the guy in the Alabama backfield after Damian Harris and Najee Harris left for the NFL in 2019, 2020 respectively. So in his first opportunity, he racked up that many yards and that many touchdowns on the ground. And I've been saying, you guys know, I've been saying for weeks now, if not months, that we needed a running back, we needed a RB in this group. And I've been talking about Breece Hall as a potential guy at pick 47, but he was picked earlier in that stud Jets draft class, earlier in the second round. But I honestly think that Brian Robinson might actually better fit our running back group right now. He brings to the table something that I believe Antonio Gibson doesn't bring, at least right now, and J.D. McKissic doesn't bring. And that's a true thumper in the backfield, a true bruiser in the backfield, I should say. And I think he's going to be really good. He's going to be, you guys know, I was never a fan of Peyton Barber, but he's going to be Peyton Barber on steroids. As in, he's going to play a similar role, at least to start, right? Be that bruiser for us. I think he's going to be a goal line merchant for sure for people who potentially draft Antonio Gibson in their fantasy draft. I don't think it's necessarily a smart move because I think Brian Robinson is going to rack up the touchdowns this year at the very least. And he's gonna be a very good player for us, guys. He's going to be a very good player. Again, I understand 3rd round pick, running back, maybe a little too pricey. But at the end of the day, it was a compensatory pick in the 3rd round. I don't think enough people are talking about this. It was the number 34th pick in the 3rd round, essentially a 4th rounder, and honestly, a lot of people had him going in the 3rd or the 4th, so I don't necessarily think that the value was that bad for that pick. I think by far the worst value for us was in the 2nd round. 4th round, Percy Butler, safety out of the University of Louisiana, senior, actually I think second youngest in this group behind the next guy that I'll mention. 21, will turn 22 this month. Much like yours truly and Evan as well. And even with some of the talk around Butler, I still think this fan base is underselling this guy. I know he came from Louisiana, not LSU, right? No powerhouse, Louisiana, Raging Cajuns, I believe. But he's 6 feet, 195-pound safety who can fly, bro. Like, he ran a 4.36 at the combine. Last year had 61 tackles, 4 pass breakups. And I think this is one of the biggest things that's going for him. Chris Sims, one of the best NFL analysts, at least in the media community, and a great film evaluator, thought he was a super rangy safety and actually went out there and said on Twitter after we picked him that he's the best pure free safety in the entire draft, and we need a free safety. I know everybody keeps saying we signed Bobby McCain to an extension, but I think that move just reeks of desperation because this team keeps wanting to find someone. And why would they not? Keeps wanting to find someone to play alongside Cam Curl. And Bobby McCain is a capable guy. He's definitely a good player. But Percy Butler has the potential of being an even better player than Bobby McCain because of the traits that he's already coming into the league with and traits that he could potentially develop as seasons go along. And I honestly can see him pushing immediately for free safety. I know he's arguably one of the best guys on special teams coming out of this class, but I think at free safety he could potentially push for starts, and yeah, he potentially could form a very good duo on the back end of our defense with Cam Curl. 5th round, I think this is the pick that most of you guys had been waiting for in terms of my analysis on. I agree with many of the people out there. This is arguably the seal of the entire NFL draft. I think we maybe need to temper our expectations on Howell a little bit, just because he was a QB quarterback falling in this draft in a pass-happy league with several teams in need of a quarterback, right? And he fell to the 5th round. So I think we might need to temper our expectations a little bit. But, I mean, it's all there for him, bro. He was the odds-on favorite to go number one overall. Number one overall. Not number one quarterback. Not number one first rounder. Number one overall in the 2022 draft before the 2021 season. Right? So that just shows you that his 2020 season was marvelous. He had all the traits. And, sure, his draft stock fell last year, but you also have to factor in he lost De'Ami Brown, he lost Javonte Williams, he lost Michael Carter. All those guys were drafted after the relatively amazing 2020 season for the UNC Tar Heels. And despite that, was 9th in all of college football and combined yardage, was a true dual threat quarterback. And I forgot who mentioned this point in NFL media circles, but I remember someone mentioned that him actually using his legs a lot more last year, to the tune of 824 yards and 11 touchdowns on the ground, might actually be a huge benefit for him in terms of his pro readiness already, because it unlocks something that he did not use in terms of his legs. He did not use in the years prior. So he already had the arm talent, but he unlocked another tool that could potentially be of big use to any NFL team, and luckily that is the Commanders. He still had 3,056 yards through the air and 24 touchdowns, only 9 picks. And honestly, it was a great pick in the 5th round. I think the number 1 pick in the 5th round by the Washington Commanders, and we should be ecstatic. I don't think he's going to push for starts anytime soon, and that's coming from a guy who might be one of the most pessimistic people out here, at least in the podcast community, when it comes to Carson Wentz. I don't think he's going to push for starts. He's probably going to be the 3rd string guy. Maybe he might push Taylor Heineke in training camp for a backup spot. We'll see. But still, regardless, he could potentially be a starter down the line. And I think saying that in terms of a quarterback means that it was a huge value pick. And I love that pick. That's probably a lot of you guys' favorites pick in this entire draft class. And I can see that, honestly. 7th round, Chris Paul, offensive guard, Tulsa, redshirt senior, 23. Yes, or no, I should say. Not the NBA player, not one of my favorite basketball players of all time, it's CP3, but he's a strong offensive guard, also huge, 6'3", 323 pounds. It's wild, though. He also ran a 4.89 the 4-yard time in. It feels like these players get faster every single year, and super crafty with his technique. I've heard that he's better in the run game than the pass game, but I think regardless, he fits Washington run scheme very well, and as a Brandon Sheriff fan, I think we definitely needed to address the position, letting Brandon Sheriff go, and we did a pretty good job of it, getting Andrew Norwell and getting Trey Turner recently as well, who I think will be a very good player for us, and potentially I think will become a starter for us at right guard over Wes Schweitzer. But regardless, Wes Schweitzer, Keith Ismail, Chris Paul, you're adding depth to the offensive line group, and with all the injuries, with COVID, with everything that's happened in the past in terms of guys going down on the offensive line especially, I think it's very important to get someone like that in the 7th round. And we did. We got Chris Paul, and I think we should be happy about that. And then lastly, Christian Holmes, I think the most under the radar, by far, guy in our draft class, cornerback, Oklahoma State, redshirt senior. I think his age of 24 years old has a lot to do with it as well. But 6'1", 205, 4.54 second, 40-yard time. So not the fastest of the guys. And there's already talks about him potentially converting to safety. And I think mostly draft scouts have talked about that, but even Ron Rivera, I think, mentioned the possibility as well. He's a better man corner than zone corner, but and he had some red flags in college in terms of, drawing a lot of flags, I should say. So that might be an issue for him, but I think he's a depth piece. I don't think we should expect anything more than that at this point, but maybe he could potentially be a good player for us down the line. But overall, I'll say it again. This draft class was a great draft class. Was a B minus. Maybe it might not have been as great of a draft class as when Kyle Smith was running things, which I think still should be a possibility at this point, but it is what it is. He accepted a job with Atlanta, and it's time to move on. But I think this draft class is better than a lot of fans think, which again, it's sort of the inverse how these things work. Usually you guys are telling me to be more optimistic about our chances, to be, super happy about things when it comes to this team. But I feel like it's the other way around here. So that's it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I know this was a little long. Might have rambled some, but I wanted to get a lot off my chest in terms of my rave reviews for this draft class. Again, the Phidarian Mathis pick was probably the worst pick out of this class, but honestly, I could see him becoming one of the best players coming out of this class. And I like what Burgundy Blog said on Twitter, I believe, last week. And he said that he said that a lot of fans would probably rate this draft higher if they just switched the Sam Howell and Phidarian Mathis pick or did something of that sort. And I agree, man. If you just do that in your mind, honestly, it's a pretty solid class and a lot of good players. I think Jahan Dotson is going to be the crown jewel of this class for sure. He is the first rounder after all, but I think he's going to be a very good player for us. But honestly, it's going to come down to him. If he produces, and also Sam Howell as well, if they produce, I think this draft class will set the stage for a very, very competitive team for years to come. But with that being said, please make sure to like, comment, subscribe to the DMV SportsZone channel. I like to post fire content like this as much as possible. Again, I apologize for rambling. Please also make sure to follow our Instagram page, all lowercase DMV SportsZone, our Twitter page at DMV SportsZone, and our TikTok at DMV SportsZone as well. And shout out to our boy Evan, who got, the Caps Twitter. I don't know if you guys saw that. That's Evan. That's our boy Evan, who makes videos on this channel, a good friend of ours. He actually got free tickets to the Caps game. They gave it to him and stuff based off of the whole dance that went viral and everything. So shout out to him. Shout out to all you guys, and see you on the next one.